Part 1. Path of Darkness. In the quiet village of Halloween, thatched cottages nestled like secrets at the edge of an ancient, whispering forest. The village was a place of simple joys, filled with the scent of lavender and hearth smoke, where children's laughter echoed down cobblestone lanes. But as the sun set, villagers hurried indoors, barring their doors and windows with charms and whispered prayers. For beyond the village's safety, the forest was a realm of shadows, where ancient spirits stirred under canopies so thick, even moonlight barely touched the ground. Lilith had grown up with stories of the forest, tales woven by her grandmother as she sat by the fire. "The trees have eyes," her grandmother would say in a low, warning voice. "And the shadows, child, they are alive, carrying secrets older than time." Lilith would shiver, but her curiosity only grew. Unlike the others, she felt drawn to the forest as if it held a truth she was destined to find. Her brother Reuben was the only one who shared her fascination. Together, they would sneak out on moonless nights to the forest's edge, daring each other to go just a little farther. Reuben, with his wild red hair and mischievous grin, was always the braver of the two, leading their small adventures with laughter that echoed off the trees. One night, they stumbled upon an ancient stone, half buried in moss and marked with symbols neither could read. Reuben's fingers traced its grooves, his eyes glinting with excitement. "Someday, Lilith, we'll know what these mean. Someday we'll see the heart of the forest." She laughed, the sound filled with the innocence of youth. "Not if grandmother finds out," she teased, tugging him back toward the village. But that was before the darkness took him, before the forest with its ancient, unspeaking trees swallowed him whole. Weeks passed since Reuben's disappearance, but grief did not lessen for Lilith. The villagers whispered tales of dark spirits and curses, but dared not speak of them to her. Lilith, with her fierce eyes and relentless determination, had become a shadow of the girl she once was. Each night, she ventured deeper into the forest, searching for any trace of him. She walked the paths they had explored together, calling his name into the silence, but only the wind ever answered. One evening, with the sky darkening and the scent of pine thick in the air, Lilith stepped beyond any path she'd known. The trees around her grew older, their branches weaving a ceiling so dense it blocked out the stars. Here, the forest's heartbeat thudded louder, pulsing with unspoken warnings beneath her skin. She pressed on, driven by the memory of Reuben's carefree laughter. She stumbled into a clearing where moonlight pulled over an ancient altar, vines winding around it as though to reclaim it from time. Shadows flickered around its base, shifting like they were alive. The air crackled, and Lilith felt the hairs on her arms rise. From the shadows, a tall figure stepped forward, his presence as dark and commanding as the forest itself. His hair cascaded like midnight, and his eyes, sharp and silver, seemed to pierce her very soul. "Who are you?" she breathed. "I am Alaric, keeper of the night," he said, his voice smooth as velvet, wrapping around her like cool air, And you, Lilith, seek something precious, don't you? Her breath caught, the sound of her name on his lips, both unsettling and familiar. My brother, she whispered. Rowan, he's lost. A faint smirk touched Alaric's lips. Lost, but not beyond reach. To find him, you must leave behind the light you cling to and embrace the night. Lilith's heart pounded. A choice stood before her, stark and cold. Hold to what she knew or let go and step into the unknown. Memories of Rowan flooded her, his wild laughter, the nights they had run through the woods, barefoot and free. She swallowed, her eyes blazing with newfound resolve. I'll do it. Alaric's smile deepened, something ancient and knowing flickering in his eyes. Then prepare yourself, Lilith. Once you take the night into your heart, there is no turning back. He reached out, his fingers brushing her temple, and the chill seeped into her like the coldest winter night. It curled through her veins, sharpening her senses, making every sound, every whisper of the forest thrum with life. Her vision dimmed, and when she opened her eyes, the world around her had changed. The trees whispered secrets she could suddenly understand, and the night pulsed with a heartbeat of its own. Show me the way, she said, her voice now carrying a resonance that was both hers and not. To reach him, you must first take the life force of another, Alaric said, his tone hardening. Only then can you step into the shadowed realm where Rowan waits. The command made her falter, a flicker of her old self stirring. What are you saying? I didn't agree to this. Darkness doesn't come without a price, Lilith, Alaric said, his eyes gleaming. It is a choice that binds, that deepens, but it is the only way forward. Under the pale glow of the moon, Lilith returned to the village, moving through shadows with an ease that felt both exhilarating and strange. She spotted a young man standing at the edge of the square, his face upturned to the sky. His name was Lucian, a quiet soul known for his kindness and contemplative nature. He had once spoken of dreams where he wandered endless forests searching for something unnamed. Lilith's heart ached as she approached him. She did not want to do this, but the memory of Rowan, the hope of seeing him again, pushed her forward. She stepped into the light, her red hair glowing like embers, and spoke his name. Startled, he turned, eyes meeting hers. His gaze was cautious, sensing the change in her. Who are you? He asked, voice low and steady. Someone who has seen beyond this world, she replied, her smile shadowed. And I can show you what lies hidden in the night. Lucian's brow furrowed, but curiosity flickered in his eyes. He reached out, the space between them trembling with an unspoken connection. But as their hands touched, guilt and longing surged in Lilith, almost breaking her resolve. She could feel the warmth of his life, the light she would take, but she pushed through, for Rowan. When Lilith crossed into the shadowed realm, the air crackled with energy. The trees here were taller, their bark black as pitch, whispers winding through twisted branches. Her eyes, now attuned to the dark, found Rowan slumped against an ancient tree, his eyes half closed, caught in a dazed state. "Rowan!" she called, running to him. His eyes fluttered open, confusion giving way to recognition. "Lilith?" His voice cracked, a shadow of the boy she remembered. How did you find me?" Tears sprang to her eyes as she cradled his face. "I promised I would find you no matter what." Before relief could settle, a shadow swept across the clearing. Alaric appeared, his eyes gleaming with something between triumph and regret. "So, you have found him," he said, his voice carrying a warning. "But tell me, Lilith, do you truly think you can banish the dark now that you have embraced it?" Lilith rose, pulling Rowan to his feet as she faced Alaric. "The darkness may live in me, but so does the light. I will not be bound by either alone." With a fierce cry, she summoned the spark within her, a blaze that pushed back against the encroaching shadows. Light surrounded her and Rowan, filling the clearing as Alaric's form wavered, his silver eyes narrowing. "You think the light wins here?" he whispered, his voice fading into an echo. "Shadows never truly disappear. They wait. They return. Life is a cycle, Lilith. Darkness will find you again." A fierce storm tore through the forest, thunder rolling beneath Lilith's feet. Lightning split the sky, casting sharp light on the ancient trees. Lilith felt her heart pounding, her whole being caught in the pull of the shadows that surrounded her. And there, in the heart of the storm, she felt him, Alaric. His presence was near, as familiar as it was distant, like a shadow woven into her own. His voice threaded through the chaos, calm and steady, even as the storm raged. "Lilith," he murmured, his tone soft yet charged with something ancient. She felt herself pulled between forces, light and shadow. He was neither enemy nor ally, but something deeper, something that echoed within her, dark and knowing. She felt him, not with fear, but with a strange ache, a bond that neither could deny, even as she braced herself to break it. With one last surge of power, she held her ground, calling forth every spark of light that had carried her here, and with a cry that seemed to tear through her soul, she felt Alaric's form dissolve, scattering like mist into the storm. The darkness lifted, leaving her alone, her heartbeat still echoing with his presence. Part 2. Path of Twilight. When Lilith opened her eyes, the storm was gone. Dawn broke softly, light filtering through the trees. The forest stretched around her, familiar yet changed, as though the world itself had shifted with her. Nearby, she found Rowan, leaning against a tree, his face pale but alive. She hurried to his side, kneeling as his eyes opened, and saw relief flicker in them, faint yet unmistakable. "Lilith," he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. "We made it. We're back." She nodded, brushing a leaf from his hair, grounding herself in the warmth of his presence. "Yes," she murmured, her voice filled with both certainty and fragile hope. "We're back, and we'll find a way forward." Rowan managed a small, weary smile. Their shared trust, unspoken, yet strong. She turned, taking in the forest around them. And there, just beyond the trees, she saw him. Lucian stood at the edge of the clearing, his gaze turned toward the woods, as though hearing a distant call. He looked lost, caught between worlds, and her heart tightened as she watched him. She rose, moving toward him carefully, her voice gentle. "Lucian." He turned, blinking as though he had just awoken, his expression softening as he saw her. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, a faint glimmer, like a distant star breaking through mist. "Lilith?" he asked, his voice quiet, uncertain. "I'm here," she replied, reaching out a hand. His eyes met hers, though they held no memory of their journey, only the trust of someone seeing her as a familiar anchor. She felt a pang of sorrow, but offered a comforting smile. "Come with us," she said gently, her words carrying both a promise and the hope for what might lie ahead. Together, they began their quiet journey back to the village. When they stepped from the forest shadows into the sunlight, they saw a group of villagers working at the edge of the square. Their faces turned in astonishment, expressions shifting from disbelief to relief. The villagers had given up hope of seeing them again, fearing the forest had taken them, like so many before. "They are alive! They made it back!" someone murmured while others crowded closer, eyes wide with curiosity and awe. Rowan gave them a steady nod, and though Lilith felt the weight of their journey, she couldn't deny the warmth of the villagers' welcome. In the days that followed, Lilith, Rowan, and Lucian returned to the clearing where the ancient altar had once stood. Stone by stone, they began to build a temple, a place where light and shadow could find balance. Rowan was a steady presence, his laughter slowly returning, each stone he placed bringing a sense of peace. Lucian worked quietly, his gaze often drifting toward the trees, as if he felt the forest's call. As the temple grew, villagers who had once feared the forest began to visit, drawn by whispers of new stories. They brought flowers, grains, and small offerings, leaving them at the altar as if the temple held power to heal old wounds. The forest, once dark and foreboding, had become a place where light and shadow wove together, a place of quiet reflection and shared memory. In this sacred place, Lilith felt a fragile peace settle within her, though she knew it was woven from shadows as much as light. Yet, even in this peace, Lilith kept her eye on Lucian, sensing something unresolved a faint shadow lingering just beyond his reach. The forest still whispered to him, calling to a part of him that seemed to resist, and she couldn't shake the feeling that Alaric's presence had not truly left. It lingered, woven through the forest's ancient roots, waiting. One evening, as twilight settled over the temple, she found Lucian standing alone by the altar, his face bathed in the warm glow of candlelight. She moved closer, but as she did, his expression shifted. A glint of silver flickered in his eyes, sharp and piercing, sending a chill through her. It was a look she knew too well. She froze, her breath catching as that familiar intensity flashed across his face, an echo of Alaric's knowing stare. The air thickened around her, and just as she opened her mouth to speak, a sudden gust swept through the clearing, making the candles sputter and casting restless shadows along the temple walls. She felt the darkness press in, ancient and familiar, a reminder that Alaric's spirit was never far, woven into the very shadows. Lucian blinked, the silver in his eyes fading as quickly as it had appeared. He looked at her, troubled but unaware, as though waking from a dream. "Do you feel that?" he murmured, his voice low. It's like something is pulling at me. Something I can't explain. It's calling to me." Her heartbeat quickened, and she stepped closer, placing a hand over his, her voice soft but steady. "Some things may never fully leave us," she said, her words both warning and reassurance. "But we choose how we answer. Remember that." Lucian nodded slowly, his expression clearing, a flicker of a smile easing the tension in his face. "Then we choose together," he whispered, his words finding strength in hers. As night fell, the forest grew quiet around them, standing as a silent witness to the delicate peace they had created. The candles in the temple flickered, casting shadows that danced along the walls, a reminder that light and dark were bound, one to the other. Lilith closed her eyes, feeling the forest breathe around her, carrying with it Alaric's final words. Shadows never truly disappear. They wait, they return. Darkness will find you again. Bound by twilight, Lilith knew their journey would continue, the cycle of light and dark ever turning. For now, she held close to those beside her, not as heroes, but as souls bound to a story woven from both shadow and light.